What's going on, guys, and welcome back. Happy Monday and happy Snapchat Day. Mobius comes to the game tonight, and he's going to change absolutely everything as he'll be countering the best cards and decks in Marvel Snap. We're also going to be talking about the best cube winners within the game, cube MVPs, and which cards on a consistent basis win you the most cubes. Lastly, we're going to be talking about all of the cards that might be buffed or nerfed, some hidden ones at that. And as always, I'm joined by Mr. Alex Kocha, the man that doesn't care what anybody has to say. That was the best comment I've ever seen in the last version of the Snapchat. How we doing, man? We've got ourselves a colossal big week. For the first time with confidence, we can say there's a card coming out that's going to be relevant probably for the rest of Marvel Snap. And we had a pretty big letdown this week as well. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, Cozy. Yeah, last week's episode was hilarious. A lot of people picked up on the fact that apparently I don't care about what anybody says. I don't even realize that I say the same thing very often sometimes. It's so funny that in retrospect, the comment section's like, hey, Alex said this like 9 times in this episode. I had no idea.
No, I think it's like a way to fill speech, and you don't, it's like a pattern recognition because I say man a lot. I don't know. Every now and then I'll be editing something and I'm like, I said something 10 times in a row. But yeah, drop down below what are the things that we say the most without even knowing that we say them, and I'm kind of scared to read them. But yeah, dude, this is going to be quite the week. Ravonna, we're obviously going to talk about on your side, but yeah, a major letdown. You know, definitely crazy to see. Just a disappointment in what she was going to bring to Marvel Snap. But we have some solid subjects, but the decks and everything going well for you this week?
Yeah, it's been a great week. I've been having a lot of fun playing a variety of different decks. And what's cool about Marvel Snap right now is, yeah, you have the definite cube rate winners right now in Marvel Snap, but I think there's a lot of viable lists out there and they all have very different play patterns. So depending on what you're feeling like, you've got a deck that you can turn to get some wins.
Dude, I was going to have as a subject, but I didn't include it. It was going to be named, Where the Hell Are These? And before we jump into the subject, I was like going through my collection and I was looking through, I think I just got a Typhoid Mary Ultimate. I'll bring it up later. And I was like, where are the first edition badges? Like, I forgot they existed. And then I was like, wait a second. First edition badges, we have some like Ultimate Spice. Like, we're coming on like a year without those, yeah?
It's true. I actually, until you mentioned it right now, which you've taken me by surprise on, I forgot the first edition badges were even going to be a thing, right? And I don't even know what they're supposed to even look like. Like, I know that they were announced, the first edition badges, and even then I didn't conceptually understand what they were. Like, if they're like a sticker on top of your card or something, like, what are they even?
I don't know, but I think we are, maybe next week we'll have a topic on quality of life that's needed. You know, I love when we get like in the ebbs and flow of Snap with like great card releases, but I think it's time we get a little bit of like a healthy quality of life update for a couple of features in the game. But anyway, buddy, what are we talking about on your side of the Snapchat?
We'll be talking about Ravonna in review. We'll be discussing our experiences playing Ravonna and the general kind of feedback from the community. And then we're going to be talking about our top 10 best 2-drop cards in Marvel Snap. This is going to be really interesting because I'm really interested in seeing how you've ranked the 2-cost cards, which is super hard, by the way. And then finally, we'll be talking about our September favorite cards at every single cost. What are the cards that we had the most fun playing this September?
Yeah, when we were doing the 2-cost rankings, I like start by putting them all down on a list, and I had like 19 names, and I was like, "What? How am I supposed to make a top 10 with this?" Definitely gonna catch some flack there, but always fun doing those lists. Well, dude, we have a lot of time dedicated to again what is surely going to be a surefire hit of a card. Not exactly the sexiest. Not saying that Owen Wilson is not a great looking man, but the card isn't going to be something that jumps off the page, but rather has a massive impact in Marvel Snap. We call him Triple M. Mobius M. Mobius is a 2-cost, 3-power card. Ongoing, your cost cannot be increased, Alex, and your opponent's cost cannot be reduced. Now, oftentimes when we have tech cards like Armor or Cosmo, you know, they affect the entire lane, whereas Mobius is going to give you the advantage. He comes with a good power cost. Alex, first impressions of Owen Wilson and how you think he's going to impact Marvel Snap.
My first impressions are that it's going to be one of the most important cards ever printed in Marvel Snap. And if you want to take a second to consider what its potential power level can be, we've always talked about how cost reduction is by far the most powerful effect in Marvel Snap. And this card counters the most powerful effect in Marvel Snap, which is cost reduction. So the effect that Mobius is going to have can be absolutely immense on the meta, because all cost reduction effects are now going to be able to have a kind of release valve. The release valve that we've been talking about so often with Glenn and the balance team, this is exactly it. This is the release valve for cost reduction, and I think it's going to be huge.
Yeah, he's going to feel like any deck that can fit this card in is going to want to just run it out of both a defensive and an offensive metric, right? So that's what's cool about him. You can use him defensively. If you're playing a Sarah deck, you can have him to make sure that the opponent can't use him against you, but also on offense. This card is going to single-handedly nuke probably the two best cards in the game. Right now, if you're not playing either Loki or a Wave on 5 style of deck, Alex, call it what it is, it feels pretty bad. It's a very, very hard meta with these two cards controlling it, and Mobius is going to come here and just shut it down to a large extent. For instance, playing Wave on now 3 after Mobius allows you to cheat off a Dr. Doom, and your opponent can't. That's going to be massive as far as an offensive approach, but, you know, obviously having a Loki that you don't have to worry about anymore is going to be massive as well. This should give devs, in my opinion, the tools they need to make some future cost reduction cards that feel a bit more safe, right? I think what's wild about him, though, is like, let's say On Reveal was like the top of the meta right now, and it was just kicking butt, and Cosmo didn't exist. And then Cosmo came out, right? We would be like, this is it. This is going to be the card. This is so major. It's going to be great forever. But then imagine if Cosmo only affected the opponent's On Reveal. Like, that's where things, to me, scream that Mobius is going to be, if not one of the best 2 costs, which we're going to rank him on your side, but one of the most important cards in Snap.
The idea that you can basically use it as an offensive weapon in addition to using it defensively is incredible. And what you talked about with the idea of using Wave on, say, turn 3, and then their cards not getting discounted down, so they're like, well, I guess I'll play a Punisher and you drop your Hulk or whatever, like that is hugely disproportionate value, right? So because their cards can't be discounted, so how does their 6-drop turn into a 4 but yours can, right? So the offensive power of this card is absolutely massive, as is the offensive power. So it's pretty crazy how there's like 2 sides to this Triple M blade, and both of them are terrifying from a tech perspective.
And then he has 3 power, right? Like he has a respectable 3 power. Luke Cage only has 2 power. And also, just remember, there are some locations, obviously, like Dream Dimension and things that kind of affect general cost. Iceman, just a card we've had to deal with for so long. He's a great defensive tool against that. But Alex, this is where things, in my opinion, let's talk about some, not only decks, but also like cards that I don't think people are understanding why Mobius is going to be one of the biggest radical changes brought to Snap, guys. Because it changes the fundamental. People are going to try to play the same things they've been playing and realize, wait a second, I'm going to be pretty screwed if I try to do this. So here's a couple that I thought of. Now, first of all, this one just felt terrible to me, right? Like already somewhat of a struggle to get this out reliably all of the time. Lady Death. Death has been an awesome card. Mobius makes Death literally unplayable. Like that alone against a Destroy deck, and or if you think about just the way energy cheating is going to work in Destroy moving forward, I mean, wow, right? Like that, just the one card there as a first example. There's a lot more, but kind of crazy just that impact on Destroy.
Yeah, literally an unplayable card at 8 costs. You can't do anything. The only thing you can do is discard it, basically, right? Have a discard style effect. But yeah, like there's so many different combinations, like, because I know that people obviously see the defensive side, but the offensive side is wild, especially when you consider that if you take a 6 cost or a 5 cost, you drop it to 4, then you can play like a 2 drop, you can play 2 1 drops because your costs don't increase, right? So what about like something like a Ronin and Master Mold? Right? Like you can play those on 1 turn now on turn 6.
Yeah.
Like you play your turn 5 Wave and then you Master Mold and you play Ronin. Is Ronin relevant again? Maybe not, but that's just an example. That's definitely a combination that wouldn't have been playable or possible prior.
Yeah, and that's where it's going to be interesting because I would say we're going to have a lot of Mobius and Mobius on the board, right? Which then means if you think about it, it's neutralized. Everything's just at its base cost. That's how it's going to end up working. But it's interesting because the massive advantage, I don't think it'll turn into who gets Wave and who doesn't, because we're going to talk about how you're going to handle this, and I think there's plenty of ways to do so. But it's going to create a lot of combos that used to be put into decks now all of a sudden aren't going to be. So like a great example is I want to see what it does to the Zabu meta, right? Like taking away the ability to Shang-Chi on 6 with another card, it is the fundamental value, right, of something like Zabu, of how you get that to really start cooking. Beast and bounce decks, you completely get rid of the cost reduction, which makes these decks work. It gives the breath of life into bounce decks, already an archetype that's struggling. Done. And this deck can't really run Mobius, or doesn't really want to protect it, right? Like Sarah Control is a great example. You're just going to plug Mobius in Sarah Control, and it's going to work, if not better, now because you have a way to use it offensively and defensively. Bounce is going to be screwed.
Yeah, Bounce can't like feasibly just add Mobius to a list, right? There are some decks that can, but like you're right, Bounce is going to get really negatively impacted, and it's already been hit. Like it's already been nerfed. Right. Now Mobius kind of takes a lot out of it. Stature in Bolt lists as well. Stature can't get discounted, but I do think that those lists could probably find room for something like a Mobius, right? I mean, there's so many. Like even Miles Morales. Miles Morales can't go down in cost. Right, so those kind of silky smooth lists, they won't want to run Mobius because you want to run your Kraven and everything. So it's crazy how like tight decks are in Marvel Snap. You only got 12 cards, and like if you have to fear Mobius as much as you do, then there's a good chance you won't be able to play him for the next couple of weeks because there's gonna be Mobius everywhere.
There's a lot of decks that have already loads of 2 costs, right? Like the value card lists, like you alluded to, Stature and whatnot. Like those are probably gonna want to have Mobius because then it continues things, but it's still, if they don't play him, it's going to hurt it dramatically. But when you think about like Zabu list, yeah, you could put him in there, but Zabu's your play on 2. So now for good, outside of maybe turn 5 with a 4-cost card, it's just so awkward with Mobius being in existence whatsoever. So like, what do you do in that scenario? I'll kind of allude to what I think you're going to do to be able to counter that in a moment. But then like a great example of this, and I think you alluded to it a little bit, is yeah, the Silky Smooth list, right? That's a list I've been playing a ton lately. You can play Mobius later on turn 5 in conjunction with Wave, which is what that deck wants to do right now, to lay you down maybe a Doctor Doom and or, you know, a Lyeth. There's a lot of cards that you could play alongside Wave. Just when do you play down the Mobius now? Because it's going to compete with the Angela, the Kraven, the Jeff, the Silk. There's so many 2 costs, as we're about to get to on your side. So him being 2 costs is really strong, but it also has to compete with other decks that they need that turn, you know?
Yeah, you're right. And it's funny you mentioned Zabu as well, because an interesting fact about Zabu is its win rate's actually far lower than people think it is. I was surprised to learn when I was doing some statistical analysis that Zabu's win rate is about 51 to 52% right now. And so like, when you think about what Mobius is going to do to that archetype, when you have a card like Mobius, right? You only have 12 deck slots and card slots in a deck, and so when you want to put in an additional 2, right, how you can combo it on turn 5, like for instance Wave is the most natural, but there's going to be other opportunities to play Mobius in other points of the game. But with Zabu based decks, right, because you're going to want to play Zabu on 2, then you want to play a 4-drop that's discounted to 3 on 3, and then on 4 you don't want to play Mobius plus another 2-drop. It becomes a little more awkward, so it feels like you might be more susceptible to Mobius as a attack, because you simply don't want to put him in that deck to play him down off tempo anyways, if the whole point of playing Zabu is to play like with that cheated mana advantage the entire time.
It's funny because what he does is it forces players to now probably wave out as quickly as they can. Like if Mobius isn't on the board, you almost like better get wave down on 3 because you can't hold on. I don't think you're going to be able to hold on the wave anymore. Like I think this directly, it's the on-off switch. I get it if you have Wave in the deck and Mobius, and then you try to make that work. But this isn't, in my opinion, this isn't like a card that we've seen come out where like you're going to see him sometimes, then other times not. He is going to be in a large percentage of games. I think Luke Cage, when High Evo came out, sneaking in Wave isn't going to work, and playing a 3/3 with no effect is going to suck. It's going to be a big-time bummer. And oftentimes, I'm not going to say it's going to, you know, lead to a loss, but in a tempo, it just, you ruin your entire tempo, right? And it's going to mess that up. Dude, another archetype that doesn't need the hit, but my God, can we pour one out here for Mr. Negative? I mean, this completely nullifies this deck.
Yeah, it destroys negative. The negative cards will still have like their inverted power, but the cost will revert to the original cost, right? And that, it completely destroys the point of playing negative. And it kind of makes me wonder if at some point do they release something that helps Mr. Negative, because as already, like, it already is not a good archetype. Like, it's a very feast or famine type archetype. Like, if you can catch someone for 8 cubes by surprise, then you do it if they completely underestimate the power of Mr. Negative. But most experienced players will know if they get negative, if they snap, they get negative down on 3 with a Psylocke or whatever, like, you just retreat and you go to the next one where they don't get that draw, right?
Yeah.
So Mr. Negative as a whole already has like a sub 50% win rate. You add Mobius in the mix, and then like it's just a complete detriment to that entire archetype. So something has to happen, right?
There's gonna have to be some serious OTAs that come out. I think Balance, we kind of alluded there, that just help patch up some stuff that's gonna be happening, right? Like, Balance is gonna need love if Mobius is truly getting a 70% play rate, right? Like, Balance is gonna be dead in the water, and they're gonna have to look at what do they do back to Hitmonkey and Beast. Shadow King's already back down to a 2 cost now, or not back down, but is at a 2 cost. So that's already a direct counter. So they're going to have to take a serious look on what this card's going to bring into the game, and then like how to fix some of these archetypes. We glanced over it, but I think that the main topic at hand that we have to just talk about, and again, it doesn't change that he's my favorite in the playstyle. Loki, man. This is just, it's so good of a deck that we have seen in Snap. I mean, to a point that it's crazy. And I'm going to stand by this, even though he's one of my favorite cards that has been released in the game. I don't want them to ever do this again, where a card is this good, doesn't get addressed, and then the solution's at the end of the month. I hope that doesn't happen, because I just haven't loved the way it shaked out the meta and how it's worked, and people relying on just this Loki play. Loki's great. I want him good, right? I think there needs to be a middle balance, and I think Mobius will bring that to light. Because even playing Loki down still, you can have a 3-5. You're getting a Polaris or a Spider-Man, even if the Mobius hits, right? Like, you're going to be fine.
Basically, the feedback that I've gotten, I'm sure you've seen the same, is there's a lot of people who've been frustrated with this month's meta with Loki. I love the card, I love the archetype, but a lot of people out there are just kind of sick against playing Lokis and collectors and like these, hey, look, it's collector, he's 16 power again. It's like, you know what I mean? Even after the nerf. Yeah. So something had to happen. And I like the fact that you're saying that, like, you know what, let's not put the solution at the end of the month. Let's be a little more proactive with the OTAs. But they did nerf collector, but I don't know if that was the right call, because you murdered collector in every other deck. He's useless everywhere else now. That was just an attack on Loki. Why not just take some power off Loki or adjust that? But it was weird. What were they supposed to do, though?
And look, I can have my opinion, but also I can just look at the facts of what are the top 100 players in Snap playing right this moment, and it's Loki. They are, because it gives you the best chance to win off of what you can grab on curve. And then all these decks are having to form around it. And I never think that's healthy, right? Like, we did that with, it happened with Galactus, it's happened with Shuri, where, like, when all these decks have to form around one card, it's not great. But Mobius, hear me out. A Quinjet on 1 now and a Loki on 3 are dead-ass plays. They're dead if you have Mobius. They're dead. They don't do anything at that point. So that is going to very much, it's a risky play. It's a much riskier play having Loki out on the board with Mobius existing in the game. And keep in mind, I do think he's going to be everywhere. So I cannot wait to see. He's still going to get a lot of play. I hope he does. I'm going to play him. But I think Mobius will be the answer to Loki to tame him down just like he did in the MCU.
He has to be. He has to be the answer. And the thing about Mobius that really stands out to me is there's no clear disadvantage to playing him. Like, there are some cards where, like, okay, if you play this card, you might, like, if you play Zabu, you might be open to, you know, more Enchantress plays, because you're playing Zabu and Darkhawk and those types of packages, right? But with Mobius, it's like there is no risk. I don't see the perceived risk. Like, I don't see a deck that, okay, well, they're playing Mobius, I can attack them with this list. There's no disadvantage to playing Mobius. It's just that if you're not playing cost reduction, they have a 2-3 that's dead in the hand, but it's still just a 2-3. And that's what, the worst that can happen? It doesn't seem like he's really that vulnerable to anything.
Because it's like, it's the same. If Luke Cage was a 2-3, he would be the same way. Everyone would play him because there's no disadvantage, right? For the most part, You're getting so much protection. The 2-2 is a little bit of that advantage or disadvantage. Slightly, obviously, less power on curve. Having the 2-3 is crazy. Like in a Kitty Pryde deck with Taskmaster, you obviously want to run Mobius to protect yourself. It's going to be a clear cut. These decks that don't need the other turns as much, right, are going to want Mobius in the deck because it just makes it all that much easier. However, let's talk about it. Because for whatever reason, if you elect to not get Mobius, you can't get Mobius, whatever that is, right? Guys, there's going to be so many ways to counter this card. There are going to be ways to dramatically shift the battle. Now, we're going to have a huge increase in Enchantress. obviously, Rogue, and then a couple other cards. But Rogue, to me, is one of the most fascinating. I mean, dude, color me excited. I think Rogue is actually going to get more play because stealing that effect is now... You don't even have to... If you get Mobius on your side, great. But stealing that effect, Alex, is downright insane.
Especially if they're relying on that effect to be part of their combo play with wave or something, and you steal the effect, and then it shuts down the turn 5 and 6 combo that they had planned. Yeah, I remember exactly this was what happened when Zabu came out, right? When Zabu came out, everyone just teched in Rogue, and then they have their own Zabu, and then they would steal theirs and have the double Zabu effect, and they'd be throwing 4-drops all over the place, right? It always happens. Like, Super Scroll's the same way, right? Like, if you're able to get Zabu down on turn 2, then you just play Super Scroll on turn 3, and then, hey, if you drop Mobius, I have Mobius too now, and it actually just nullifies each other, right? Because the Super Scroll gets the effect, and then blah blah blah. So like, I love when this happens. I love the trading of like kind of ongoing effects when there's specific ongoing cards that get really hot in the meta. And I think you're right though that like Rogue does feel like a fascinating play. Obviously fits naturally into Silver Surfer, who is an archetype that I think could use a little bit of love. So it's kind of cool to see that that card's gonna make a bit of a comeback.
Well, with him going as a 2-cost too, I love it because you have this chance now with Rogue, or if you had Zabu out, whatever, right, to shut down their wave play. Because then let's say they play Mobius and they're like, haha, I'm going to wave early so you can't mess it up. But then you just Rogue or Super Scroll, and all of a sudden they're just like, oh, well, there goes all of my strategy. I think we're going to have a lot of greedy-ish Mobius decks at first because it's the sexy, fun interaction. Like, everybody's going to try to do the wave combo, I think, right? Super Scroll might be the biggest winner. I think so, because if you look at it, yes, he has 1 less power, which is kind of ridiculous, but he has 1 less power than Mobius. However, you get that effect, and you get any ongoing effect for the remainder of that match. So all of a sudden, I think he's a much better tempo play.
It kind of makes me wonder if Super Scroll needs a buff at some point too, because I think you're right that like 4-2 is pretty heavy. It's kind of crazy to think that Mobius actually has more power than Super Scroll, and you are relying on getting Zabu out early just to counter the Mobius by getting Super Scroll down on 3. So like, you have to draw better than the Mobius player. So the more I think about it, I think Rogue is probably a better answer because it's always at 3. Mobius is always down, so you know where to hit him, right? It's probably the easier play. You're relying on 1 card, not 2.
Yeah, I mean, and let's not forget, I do think Enchantress is going to get more play because, again, she answers like a large amount of decks. But hey, they can make freaking Absorbing Man a damn 4 power, was a 5 power. I do agree. Let's get this guy up in the next OTA to 3 power. I think that is fine with me.
He can even go up to a 4-4. Like, he feels really weak. But then again, though, when there are games where like you drop the Super Scroll and they have like Iron Man and other effects, like it feels wild how powerful he can be. So I guess it is a card that has to be kept in check, but he feels too risky right now, especially with Zabu kind of waning in relevance and popularity right now. Like, him as a 4-cost feels bad. I always played Super Scroll under the impression I was only paying 3 for him. So as a 4-2, he feels way less playable than most cards.
Yeah, and he punishes someone going all out on the ongoing, but the fact that he also can get hit with the Typhoid Marys and the Lizards and things like that, like, I think that's already built into his counterplay, right? Like, Absorbing Man doesn't really have that unless a card gets destroyed, which doesn't happen all the time. I very least 4-3. I do, 4-4 could happen. I think it can come into the game, but either way, man, listen, Mobius is exciting for the future Snap, but what I think I'm most excited about him is just pushing the barrier of what we know of deck design, shutting down the meta as we know it. And where do you go to? Where do you run to? I mean, I'll be honest, Sarah with Mobius might be one of the better decks that have it all in a sense, right? Because then you don't have to worry much. What are you going to play as soon as he comes out?
So I've been thinking about a bunch of different lines, and this sounds crazy, but I'm actually feeling Devil Dinosaur. Hear me out, okay? So listen, because what you can do is you can do a wave play on 5, right, with Mobius down, and then you can play Devil Dino using 4 energy. You can play Snow Guard and Agent 13 and just stuff your entire hand, right, which is pretty wild. Like, it also brings back Arrow. Like, listen, no one's talking about Arrow. If you're able to wave on turn 5 with Mobius, that means that you can Arrow plus 2 1-costs or an additional 2-drop while basically controlling their entire play. Like, I think Arrow makes a comeback here with Triple M.
Buddy, I have played more Arrow in the last probably week than I have since she's been nerfed. Arrow is already at a point where she's phenomenal with wave on 5. And now she's got even more of a home here. Dude, hey, you know, I'm getting all hot and sweaty over here just thinking about it. But yeah, and she's going to be able to fit into the deck that has her included in it. It's just going to be fun because we're going to see Destroy. We're going to see all these other decks somewhat get adjusted. And which one's going to come out on top? I think it's going to take some time. Seriously, especially with incoming buffs and or nerfs down below that we're going to talk about with potentially America Chavez, which I think would be insane. Anything else on Mobius before we move on to the next subject?
Dude, before we move on, can we just make a comment here with the fact that you and Arrow are wearing the same thing right now? You guys both have these like blue blazers on. Are you kidding me?
We color coordinated, man. That's what couples do, Alex. I don't listen. My dream. I'm just gonna if Second Dinner's like, hey, you know, Cozy, thanks for making content for our game. Is there anything we could do for you? I'm gonna just say, you know, those great Deadpool animations you've done. Just give me one with Arrow. Just give me one. But guys, Mobius will be coming out tonight. And it's going to dramatically change Marvel Snap moving forward. Now, Alex, we are going to go on to our next subject, and I thought this was really cool. What I did is I pulled up the top 10 cards in Marvel Snap statistically that have the highest cube rate wins, right? So these cards are going to win you the most cube on average by the data. And I'm gonna start off by saying, Alex, I'm going to give you a shot here. Go ahead and give me 5 of them. Give me the 5 that you think are on here that win you the most cubes per when played. Not this is when they're drawn / played, not in your deck.
Okay, so first of all, Cozy's putting me on the spot here, so let me just go. I'm gonna say Luke Cage. I'm gonna throw Luke Cage out there. Doctor Doom.
Okay.
Do I say Alioth?
Okay.
Is Alioth worth the call there? I'd throw Alioth in there. 2 more. Who would I say 2 more? Am I getting any of them yet or no?
Go ahead, finish your 2 more, and I'll say what you got.
2 more? Okay. I'm gonna say Shang-Chi.
Okay.
And then finally, I'm gonna say Nebula.
Awesome. You went 0 for 5 somehow.
Nice.
Hey,
come on, man. You didn't give me any chance to prepare.
That's tough. It's tough, though. And I think this is what's so cool about it, because there's only probably a few that I would name personally on this list as well, right? Like, Shang-Chi, you would think so, but maybe this just speaks to players getting better at knowing, like, okay, I'm susceptible to Shang-Chi. I'm going to be completely screwed. Let's go through the order of what these cards are. And then I also want to talk about, like, in our personal list, who would we have that kind of definitely help us out? Or maybe we even start there. I think I'm okay with that. You alluded to one. Let's start there. This season, what have won the most for us personally? We just finished talking about him a little bit. Alioth, listen, I'm an Alioth gamer. I'm not a Galactus Alioth gamer, but Alioth in a lockdown deck or an unsuspected Alioth is devastating. The only reason he's not on this list, in my opinion, is he's probably just not unlocked enough. This guy wins cubes big time.
He does. And I've seen players go into A-cube games where I know they're like, oh, they think they're pulling their turn 6 playoff, and they're not. Like, you know what I mean? They think they're pulling their playoff. They're not going to pull it off because I have initiative. I have Alioth. I know where they're playing. It's not happening. And sure enough, I wiped 3-4 cards off the board on one turn. It's just like, I kind of wish I knew. I'm like, what did I just destroy? It doesn't matter. Thank you for the cubes.
Dude, I can't tell you how many times, too, like, you're winning 1 lane. They can play in 2 lanes to win. Or, like, if they play Doctor Doom, they win, and you're just, like, you're just staring. And you're just, like, trying to soul read more than you ever have before. You're like, where is this guy? Could have played this Doom. Like, it was funny. I posted a battle, and someone's like, dude, why didn't you play Doom in the Nebula lane? You would have won. Because the guy played Alioth in the other lane. So that guy soul read me, soul reading him, thinking that I would play in the Nebula lane. So he played in the other lane, because that's exactly what I would do, right? So, like, it's this weird mind game, too. And I know he seems frustrating, and I think it's largely attached to Galactus, but I do think he's healthy for the game. I think long run, he'll be a good answer as a tech card. I don't know if he'll stay the same, but in the long run, I like what he is serving in Snap, if that makes sense.
He's just fun, and he feels high risk, high reward sometimes. Like, yes, you have like the Professor X lockdown style plays, which is still good. They run about a 50, 55, 56% win rate, which is still solid. But like, obviously Galactus's interaction is borderline toxic. Like, I can understand why people are frustrated with the Galactus style play, because it's like, what do you even do, right? You retreat. You retreat is what you do, because they always have their Galactus and they always have their Alioth, right? But overall, like, if you're 50-50 or soul reading as you're suggesting, then like, I think if you could land it, then hell yeah, you take it. It's only 5 power, but if you can get that soul read down, go for it.
And I've lost plenty by not nailing the soul read, right, and being greedy when I should have retreated because I'm just putting all my faith in the big purple cloud, right? I also think a card that's not on this list today, I have Iron Man. I would say Iron Man, to me personally, is one that has won me a lot of cubes. So, like, the surpriseness of the double power has been pretty massive. I was kind of shocked that he wasn't here. At number 10, Alex, we've got a 58% win rate card. It has a 0.57. That's the bar to make it in the top 10. We've got Brood. Now, this to me, like, when I saw Brood on this list, I'm like, okay, we're not talking about just surprise cards. We're just talking about good-ass consistent cards on this list. So I saw Brood. I'm like, this makes sense, right? Like, he's just Surfer, Patriot. He's going to be on the list. But then, complete flip, 0.59. So one above it. At number 9, 52% win rate, we have Hela, which I was surprised you didn't list Hela in your first calls here because she's like miss all in on the cubes or not, yeah?
Yeah, but all in on the negative cubes too, right? Like you go 8 cubes and they just, hey, Cosmo, right? Hey, listen, I love Hela. I am excited that Hela's making a comeback. There's legit Hela Tribunal decks on there that you can climb to infinite with. You can win Conquest with. But I'm surprised to hear about Hela. But yeah, Brood, I'm actually surprised it didn't call Brood. I mean, if Brood's on there, it makes you wonder if Iron Lad's on there too, because Iron Lad has got to be boosting Brood up right now. Oh,
without question. I think it's interesting because, like, Hela decks, you can't go off stats all the time. Like, people go off stats on Loki. Like, he's getting played 20% and his win rate's only 50%. It's like, yeah, because he's being played so much and he's not as easy to play as everyone thinks. Hela, on the other hand, the win percentage may be low, but you can climb if you just know when to leave, right? If you know when to leave and when to go all in, and when you're playing a greedy opponent that for whatever reason doesn't think that they can win Hela. And also, when you play Hela, just a small little tip, write down the power in each location for like 20 games straight, because you're going to start to be able to do some calculations in your head how much exactly you can put out in best scenarios and worst scenarios. Just a little tip there. Number 8, we have Kitty Pryde. 60% win rate, which is ridiculous. 0.59, so tied with Hela there. I'm not surprised here with the Hulkbuster Taskmaster combination. I think that alone, that one combo, is what's winning the cubes. Not just like a Kitty Pryde, you know?
Yeah, the Kitty Pryde, like as you said, like the Shuri base list now with Hulkbuster and stuff is actually really elevating it. I like to see that Kitty Pryde is seeing some more experimentation with a different variety of different decks, but it continues to be an absolutely fantastic card. Even going into next season, it has potentially the opportunity to keep being a fantastic card. And this is post-nerf, by the way. Post-nerf Kitty Pryde is still absolutely slapping. And that's a Kitty Pryde that still isn't as good as the original release of Kitty Pryde, because the edition that we all got for free was already nerfed.
Dude,
I still can't believe Kitty Pryde. I got to play her for one day in the sheer, absolutely broken fashion she existed in. I'll cherish that day for the rest of my life.
On the Snapchat, you're like, man, I'm just not excited about Kitty. It's not the same. I'm like, thank God, though. You know, like, can you imagine Zabu, Surfer, Kitty Pryde, Hitmonkey, Leech, Leader? Dude, if these cards weren't changed, like, just help us all. Hulk is coming in next up at the 7th, and or is that the 6th? The 6th for 0.6 cubes, 59% win rate. Obviously makes sense. Finisher of high Evo decks. Now, Alex only coming in at an astonishing, barely 50% win rate, but 0.61 is Living Tribunal. And this, you know what it is between Hela and him? It's these cards that people know that they're being played. And they're like, I'm going to beat it. And then now, all of a sudden, there's 23 across all lanes. And you're like, wait, that's more power than I thought was about to... Like, what? Wait a second. And then he wins the big cube wins. That's the only thing I can think of. Because, good God, Tribunal's so good, but if he ever became a problem, he's the easiest thing to answer.
The thing I love about Tribunal is that it's fun to play, and I love seeing the big numbers go whoop, because they just kind of go super high, super wide, and I love the effect. I love beating Professor X players that think they have you locked down and they overcommit to a super vertical lane. Tribunal's awesome. I've been really enjoying it, and it's a card that's going to get better over time as more cards come out and more opportunities to go more increasingly vertical. Still a lot of RNG though, right? A lot of RNG with your Iron Man maybe falling into a location with your Infinite and of course your Onslaught in the deck. A lot of RNG in the decks, but I like it. That actually surprised me too. Here's an important point. We're talking about the highest cube rate cards. 50% win rate, massive cube rate. Isn't that kind of interesting?
Yeah. And that's kind of always been what Hella was, and it doesn't surprise me that now Tribunal has followed suit in the same kind, and not even in a Hella deck, but just like go big or literally go home kind of play styles, right? Like that's what I would assume. And that's how Arrow is, Glenn has alluded to. Not the best win rate or play rate, but great cube rate, right? And play more Arrow. My God, I shut down a Tribunal deck. They threw Onslaught down. I'm like, I wonder what the next card's going to be. And I threw their Iron Man into a sewer system, and it was absolutely comical. Now, tied, we have 2 cards with 0.61, so not a huge spread of difference here. Ultron, which I actually thought he'd be higher because I think when Ultron's played, he's usually sweeping up because you don't play him unless you think you're going to win, right? But he's got the same win rate as a fat 57% win rate, and he is tied with MODOK, which, talk about one that's a surprise card, the other one's just Mr. Dependable.
Absolutely. And can we just please give me a little bit of credit for showing love to Ultron over the past 2 months? Like, everyone just chirps me for Ultron. Like, look, he's legitimately one of the best cards in the game. Why is no one talking about how good Ultron is? Come on, please.
Would you put it, if we made a top 10 list next week, would you put Ultron in it?
No, I can't emotionally handle the comments anymore. Listen, one of the highest cube rate cards in the game. His win rate's fantastic. I don't care what anyone says. Obviously, he's not a surprise card anymore because you've been playing Marvel Snap for long enough. You know Ultron's coming. But Ultron is way better than people really give him credit for.
Alex doesn't care what everyone says. He just doesn't. If you have to learn one thing, he doesn't care. The man doesn't care. Now, Alex had this card as an underrated card, and now we're going to see 2 cards come to light because of it. We have Red Skull, obviously, who is paired up with the second. So third is Red Skull. Second is going to be Sauron, which, Alex, you alluded to last week. Where's that damn pterodactyl? Man, when this is played, if you're playing a Shuri deck, you just snap when you play Sauron. I mean, it is just mind-numbingly tough to beat. Mind-numbingly tough to beat. I will say Alioth has helped counter this deck a bit more in some fashions, but woof. Sauron is an absolute unit. And then any surprise here, the number 1 card right now for cube rate. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Loki. Now, it's going to definitely dramatically change with Mobius on the board, and it's going to be cool to look at these stats in the future. What you can take away from this is, do you play these cards in your deck? I mean, statistically, thousands and thousands of games, these are the ones that are winning the most cubes. So look at least at the archetypes. Look at the Shuri archetype, the Loki, the Hela. Were you surprised by any of these, and who got left out?
Yeah, Dr. Doom for me not being here is huge. I'm actually surprised Loki's number 1, to be honest with you. It surprised me he's that high. The thought that crossed my mind is, if you were to take these cards and throw them into a single deck, the deck would be horrible.
Loki, Sauron, Red Skull, Ultron, MODOK. Not a lot of plays there, but then you rely on the Hela play, I guess? Then, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, dude, that's pretty bad.
Play, but then Ultron falls first and fills the whole board so that nothing happens.
Exactly. Yeah, just god-awful. Dude, I think, listen to Loki's stats. 62% win rate, 0.67 of a cube win ratio, dude. Almost 0.7 cubes a game. That's stupid. That's just way too freaking good. Let's go to our last subject, and this is one that's spicy because I think people aren't I don't know if people know about this. I think these are some, for once, kind of saucy. I've been doing some sleuthing, and I've been looking around the Discord for some whispers of future buffs and nerfs. Now, we got to talk about what was on the highlighted topic, and this is what kind of is going to lead this topic altogether. Alex Kocha, America Chavez, Glenn says they see it as a problem, okay? She's not being played. I think it was like a 15% play rate in the decks that she's in. She's clearly there in a 12-card already deck game that already has good odds to pull your cards just to help your deck thinning. This would be one of the most dramatic changes, right up there with something like Mobius coming into the game. And guys, viewers, listeners, what do you have to say about what if Chavez is completely reworked to not have the ability to thin the deck? Can you imagine? That would be, it changed Snap.
I don't want to imagine it. I don't know how I feel about this. Like, this has always been my favorite card in Marvel Snap. Ever since the start of beta, I loved it. It's my most split card. It's the card I play the most. I literally start every deck by adding Chavez in it. I'm literally the problem. Cozy, I'm the problem. Like, I'm doing exactly what they want to stop doing. And there have been so many times where, like, we've had tournament style decks, like even in Conquerors, right? A lot of people were playing similar decks. I was playing the Chavez version and beating people because I had the Chavez in it. Like, it clearly made the deck stronger. And it's crazy to think that they're potentially attacking Chavez. And I'm going to tell you, I play Chavez more often than people might expect. Like, I think that as a turn 6 play, it's not horrible.
No,
it's not horrible. It's not, maybe not what you want, but that's also a disadvantage too, because you're not top decking a turn 6 play. You're top decking Chavez. So that could actually kill your game at the same time, right? So it's not always like all, you know, blooming roses with Chavez. Sometimes not being able to pull your turn 6 draw actually screws you over. So there's two sides to the argument.
When nobody has access to it, though, I think it's going to be much healthier for the game, because there's the term, the 12th card in the deck, right? Like that is always the term. Chavez eliminates what is really cool theory crafting, right? So in destroyed decks, or the only deck that truly in my head is like, damn, it's not fair to this deck, is discard with MODOK. To me, like, we'll talk about him next week. The Black Knight solves it a bit with how you can have a dependable play, but it just doesn't seem fair because that deck is truly having Chavez like serve the purpose of what she's supposed to be doing there, right? So I do feel bad about that deck, but every other deck, it's like, it's just limiting the creativity that can go into those decks. I know as a casual player too, like, she's not a fun card. She's a and I don't want to say a try-hard card, right? But she, like, that's what she's doing. She's helping odds and statistical play, and it's gonna feel weird, but I'm all for it. I will be for it. They've got to do her right, though. I don't want to make her a bad card. They've got to do her right. But I don't know. What do they do for one of the more beloved cards? And I know people love Chavez as a character too. So definitely interesting. And I want to hear the viewers' take on this. There are a few more cards, though. I'll let you. Do you have anything else on Chavez before we move on?
Yeah, I was going to say, what do? You do nothing. You leave Chavez alone. I don't think Chavez is really the problem, though. Like, it's one of those situations where, like, do you fix what's not broken? Like, is Chavez breaking the game? Is Chavez breaking the meta? Is Chavez making it so that you have 64% win rate decks? Like, we're going into full defense mode. I'm calling it what it is. I'm in full defense mode now. But, like, Chavez isn't the problem. Chavez isn't destroying the meta. Chavez isn't pissing people off. Chavez is not Galactus or Eliath or whatever the hell else is the flavor of the month. Ain't nobody mad about Chavez.
There's a bigger beast behind it, but I think the dependability of play, Chavez plays a pretty big role. I think so, as far as, like, allowing some of these decks to be enabled. Bottom line is, I'd want there to be more encouragement of deck design, and I think Chavez limits it. That's my opinion, and clearly that's how they see it too, because she's being played across literally every deck. Even the Loki decks have Chavez. The Loki decks, why? Because you want to pull Loki and Collector, right? Zabu decks, you have Chavez. Why? You want to pull Zabu. It just kind of takes away from it, whereas the play would be so much more interesting, even in tournament play, when you don't know exactly. You're going to have to make these decks dependable across the board, looking at multiple hand plays. That's why I love, like, the Kraven style deck, because you have a lot of plays that can work no matter what your hand looks like.
If they're going to nerf Chavez, okay, I'm requesting it right now. You make Arrow a 6/1 that deletes your collection. That's what I'm going to ask for. How's that?
Seems a little personal. Let's go to the next card that they're gonna that there's been whispers. Now, Chavez was probably the most intriguing, but there's another card brought up, Alex. Spider-Man 2099. I don't know if you forgot he was in Marvel Snap. Potentially you did. They know he's not great. They understand it. But more than this, I think what's interesting, because they also mentioned Arrow in this, so can you imagine Chavez getting nerfed, Arrow getting buffed? What a world. What a world. They said they want to change a lot of things concerning move and the way that it plays out, and that's going to indirectly end up buffing a lot of these cards. I can't even conceive what they mean by this, but it definitely needs it.
Yeah, that's why we're the players and not the designers, right? Because, like, they come with really creative solutions to creative problems, right? Like, there's, like, again, we've talked about how they've had buffs and nerfs that have been absolutely fantastic, right? Like with the way they changed Zabu and even the Galactus changes and stuff. And naturally, like, if I was a game designer, I would say, well, just let Spider-Man 2099 activate multiple times. Let them move it twice and destroy things twice or something like that. But if you're saying that they have a more holistic approach to improving move as a whole, I'm all for it, because move pretty much is, outside of Pool 2, move dies, right? Like pool 2, there's a moment where like it's probably one of the best decks in the game, and then all of a sudden it's just like falls off a cliff, and it's kind of sad because Move, it's a really fascinating archetype with a unique play style that really just doesn't see play.
I wish you could move your cards more and you just lower the stats, right? So like it has the, it's like anything that's in a video game where it's like a glass can, like fast but susceptible, right? So like if you have these cards like that just have lower stats, but all of a sudden you can adjust your play a lot more, it's kind of cool because you can't compete with some of the big bad boys, but you can also then move your cards and adjust your play a bit more. That's how I would go around it. All I know is Glenn is gonna nail it, man. Dude, it's so cool. I saw Glenn said his first assignment was to adjust Zabu and Silver Surfer. That was his first on the job. And then his first new cards that he affected was the Iron Lad Saga and moving forward. That man is nothing but hit. Outside of like Phoenix Force that I'm just still not crazy about. Like, dude, I'm excited to see what he'll do with Move because I think there was the right intentions of cards when they came into the game. Like Chavez, like Leech, whatever, why they came in. And then what they need to now turn into as the game's evolving. This one's going to get you excited, okay? I know Chavez got you sad. They have realized that they've got to do something about not only him, but the way that this deck plays. Ronin is on their list. Ronin is a card that they think they could be a bit more sexier and have a different play line. Dude, I would love Ronin to be a Devil Dinosaur type of equivalent type of power card.
Yeah, I actually like Ronin. I do. I play Ronin pretty frequently. I think I play Ronin more than most people do. I think that like the idea of disrupting their hand, like even with like if you play like a turn 2 Master Mold, like that's kind of annoying for them for the most part. But you're still giving them Sentinels, which low key are a very high win rate card in Marvel Snap. But Ronin is, it's always been tricky because having the same stat line as a Devil Dinosaur, but like your opponent has agency as to how big your Ronin is, sucks, right? And is it as simple as just increasing his power so
like
that
a
like
5/5 or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, if he's a 5/5, it basically gives you a free card. It gives you a free card that they have to drop, right? Whereas with like Devil Dinosaur, it's like you can keep propping your hand up. You can play Nick Fury. You can wave and then play Devil Dinosaur and a whole bunch of other stuff apparently. So something has to happen.
And speaking of that, dude, you know who got wiped from existence? Freaking Maximus, man. Talk about a card that disappeared. Like, whew, vanished. He's gone. I have not seen Maximus played for so long, even in Surfer decks. He's gone. The card's gone.
Yeah, you can't play Maximus when Loki's around. Like, what the hell's wrong? Like, we play Maximus and feed 2 cards into a Loki player's hand. You can't do that.
Absolute madness. Now, the last card that they've talked about that needs an adjustment, they have their eyes on the radar for this one, is Rescue, which to me, Rescue is kind of like the Hawkeye effect where it's like, all right, what do you do with this card? And I hope they lean into something with saving destruction cards, right? Saving cards that have been destroyed on your side. I really like the idea of a Ghost Rider kind of Hela kind of thing for Rescue, but for Destroy.
That's a cool idea. Like basically like the Ghost Rider chain, except for a card that's been destroyed, not discarded.
I kind of think it's cool. And then you could have some kind of cheeky plays and make Negasonic worth it, right? Then you have Negasonic, you play a huge card, and then on 5, you'd have to play Rescue at that point, but then you could cheat out a card. It's like a Ghost Rider for Destroy. I actually think that's what you do.
The thing I always think about when these conversations happen is like, couldn't that just be a new card though? Like, does it have to be Rescue? Couldn't it just be something else?
Yes. I
mean, then, like Rescue you can just fix the stat line so it's not
don't
garbage.
say that,
I think
though.
that literally, if it was a 3/8, okay, if Maximus is a 3/7, right? Why can't Rescue be like a 3/6 or 3/8 or something like that just has a similar effect?
That is a much easier way to do it. I don't want a new card because then people have to go get it, whereas this would be a cool card for just like the large base of collections. True. But yes, I get what you're saying. You could just make this effect still exist in the game. Kind of like the Spider-Man one. Like, they don't want to get rid of it forever. And then lastly, obviously, Ravonna. They've already talked about it. Ravonna, we're going to lead into and now head into Alex's side of that Snapchat to talk about how do you make Ravonna better. Listen, you could say she's a fun card, but the stats prove it. She's not a good card. And they've talked about already adjusting her. So we're going to talk about that more over on Alex's side. It's going to be a big week, Alex. We've got ourselves the biggest card coming to Snap. Mobius M. Mobius. Triple M. Look out. Watch out. I know next week's going to be a freaking great Snapchat. Looking forward to talking the next season, as well as how Mobius affected the game. Guys, be sure to go check out Alex's episode. And as always, until the next one, happy snapping.